Hi, I'm Teresa James, Chair of the Planning Board at the moment, and I'm glad to be here on Medfield TV with an update about the proposed zoning bylaws that we will be discussing at some open hearings on February 1st. Some of these bylaws, there's actually 6 bylaws that we're putting forth before the town for discussion. 5 of them actually had been reviewed and went before the public hearing process last January and February before we had our pandemic. And I do hope everyone is well that is watching this. But here on February 1st, we get to re-engage those bylaws and work towards our next town meeting in reviewing that. The Planning Board has an additional bylaw that we will be reviewing that I'll talk about as well. So just to kind of quickly recap what has been going on and what has been talking about, one of them, the bylaws, has to do with Janes Avenue rezoning. Janes Ave is that short little street there that kind of wraps around Town Medfield Hall behind the dental office and pulling up the side there. But what is going on is there's a small little parcel. This is, zoning laws actually can be very confusing, but our zoning districts say what can be put where. And there's a bridge between that industrial zone between a BI zoning, where Montrose is at, and the B zoning. So BI stands for business industrial, B zoning stands for business, and there's actually, as you know, some little residentials there, and we actually had a citizens petition the planning board because they needed to do some work there. So this is, when we looked at this, this amendment really rezones that one residential use parcel that's located in the BI zoning district to a B zoning. So it seems to make sense to us that we endorse this and kind of move that forward. So it's a pretty simple one that's before the town. The second one has to do with an adult-only retail tobacco, basically a vape store prohibition. And so when that comes out, you'll see here that basically we are recommending an inclusion in the Chapter 300 zoning amendment table of use regulations, which says what type of business can go where and into which zone. And in that table of use, we're recommending no across all of the zones across Medfield. So that's an adult-only retail tobacco and or vape store is as defined as an establishment whose primary purpose is to sell or offer for sale but not for resale tobacco products and tobacco paraphernalia and or electronic nicotine delivery systems such as the e-cigarettes and vaping products, and in which the entry of minor persons under the minimum legal age sales is prohibited at all times, and that checks customer identification for age verification and is required to have a valid permit for the retail sale of tobacco and nicotine products issued by the Medfield Board of Health. Again, our planning board recommendation is to set that type of business use as no, that it's not allowed in any zoning throughout Medfield. The third item is actually food trucks. Food trucks, and in this is another change to the table of use. And basically we're recommending that in the business industrial, and industrial executive, that planning board be granted a site plan approval, authorization to review food trucks and mobile food vendors on those properties with permission by the property owner, of course. So this, anything that's like a special town-wide event or anything that occurs on town-owned property, that actually goes through the Board of Selectmen. That's not a planning board review item. I think that's sometimes when we see space around our town, we think, okay, well, what's going on there? What's going on? Why can they do that there? Or who had to go for approval there? Well, that is definitely a distinguishation, is whether it's like a municipal property, but this is really related to the zoning properties where it's business industrial, and industrial executive. And that site plan approval would have them come before the planning board talk about the impacts of use, hours of operation, proposed location, noise, odors, traffic, circulation, parking, trash, waste, seating, access to facilities, signage, and obviously the permission from the property owner. Hours of operation, really key. So it's just a way to come before and then allow anybody to speak in favor or against that kind of use in one of those. The fourth one is a special permit process for decks and porches into the setback. So this one's a little harder to explain, to be honest, because in the zoning bylaws we have different things about, distance and setbacks. So, certain things have to be a certain distance and so forth. And what we're recommending in this particular bylaw is to allow a section which allows the Board of Appeals, not the Planning Board, but to review and approve on a case-by-case basis via a public hearing the encroachment of covered or uncovered decks and porches into the required front and rear setback via special permit. The reason we wanted to bring that to the table is really that the current process actually requires a variance which has strict statutory requirements when you're going forth before the Zoning Board of Appeals asking for a variance, which typically cannot be lawfully applied since most deck and porch extensions are for the more functional and subjective purposes. So, there still would be a review with this process, but however, what we're saying is let's pull it out of that variance category and move it more over into this amendment through that process. Number 5, moving on to number 5, is accessory structures. Accessory structures are things like, sheds and small buildings and things of this nature. And really what this bylaw does is it kind of brings it more in line with the Massachusetts State Building Code. Our current bylaw actually gave a dimension, 15 by 200 feet. We actually changed that. That's the biggest change, is to saying 200 square feet. And so that adjustment that was a confusing specific size requirement, we felt. So this would still require a building permit and code review for accessory structures, and the setback requirements are still as is. So, so that is number 5. And that brings us to our new one. And our new one has to do with solar and solar energy and really capitalizing on that. In 2016, we actually put through a overlay, solar, it was called the Large-Scale Solar PV Overlay District. And it was part of our process of becoming a green community in 2016. And what happens is that overlay district really focused on some ground-mounted solar in industrial zones in Medfield. Industrial zones in Medfield are typically along West Street and then around that area and so forth. And so, but this solar overlay district really didn't address all the other wonderful solar initiatives that are out there. And so we worked with MAPC and we looked at this hard and came back with a redraft of this solar PV overlay district. And the real things that we're trying to do is, in kind of redoing this one, is we reclarified the definition of what a solar energy system is, by size and type, from a large scale ground, medium scale, and then an on-site kind of installation. We added a definition for solar parking canopy so that if there was an opportunity at some of the larger parking lots, whether it be maybe Shaw's or some other areas around town, that they potentially could look at doing solar canopy arrays. We looked then at establishing the dimensional requirements then for the setbacks, height and lot coverage. And to residents, important to know, is that it also established rooftop solar as a by right accessory use, meaning that It makes it so much easier as a homeowner to go and install that solar. Those are the 6 bylaws that we are proposing to the town. We are doing our open public hearing on Monday, February 1st. They all kick off. We'd love to see you or hear from you on our Zoom call that evening. Related to solar, please do visit our town website, and underneath Planning Board, you'll actually see all of this documented, and you can read the proposed zoning bylaws, as well as there's a great document that has just been posted called Introduction to Local Solar Zoning. So it's just a quick 1-2 page. I recommend taking a quick read of that, and it makes it easier to understand that bylaw that's proposed. I will do a quick plug for the townwide master plan that has been put forth before the Board of Selectmen, and that was an initiative that, thank you so much for all of your public input, but all of those documents are now summarized and up on the town's site for review. So just wanted to put in a quick plug for that as well. Thank you so much, Medfield, and we would love to see you at our planning board meetings.